This is a Pasco Media production. Please visit pascomedia.com.
In Latin, Renovo means to renew, restore, or revive. This is the show where we explore the miraculous nature of the mundane as we look at one part of the Catholic tradition to help you engage more fully in the practice of faith. Past episodes are available at renovopodcast.com. I am Doug Tuke. It is Christmas time. It is time to dig deep into the heart of family traditions. Bring it on. This is going to be a cool show. Today, I'm not going to talk about like a bunch of like different traditions in the States. We want to talk about traditions from all over the world. Does everybody celebrate Christmas the same way? And the answer, of course, is no, which is kind of cool. Now, we all have the weirdness in our families where we do weird stuff at Christmas. Some of you rip open all your presents on Christmas Eve because you're weird, and that's just your thing. I married someone whose beautiful family, that's their thing. They just shred on Christmas Eve, and I'm like such a Christmas morning person. I'm all about like just waking up and like booyah under the tree. Oh my gosh, that wasn't there when I went to bed. That's my thing. But that is not what this show is about. This show is about all over the world. So in the United States and Canada, it's actually pretty similar. You might think it's a little different, but it's actually pretty much the same. Christmas trees are pretty much decorated, and stockings are hung in the fireplace because Santa Claus brings presents, as we all know. It's celebrated on the 25th, except for like some French Canadian communities that prefer December 24th. How about that? That's kind of wild. And we'll talk about France later on. Maybe you'll see where that kind of comes from. Lots of families actually celebrate on Christmas Eve, which we talked about. With presents and family feast and midnight mass, cards, gifts, exchanged with friends and all of those wonderful relatives, even the ones you don't like. In the United States and Canada, nativity scenes are huge. Once kind of an annual appearances, even small town public squares have now kind of been moved kind of more into my certain communities on church grounds. So, the public nativities used to be like these big things in towns, but now it's more kind of on church property. And a lot of that's just because of non-religious themes in Christmas and whatnot. But in both the U.S. and Canada, people are known kind of just for massive outreaches to the poor as well, to homeless. It's a huge celebration period. So it's a period of charity. And you kind of already know that. But it's pretty consistent with both countries. China, the Christians in China light their homes with like these gorgeous paper lanterns during Advent. And Santa is called Dun Che Lao Ren, not to be mistaken with Kylo Ren, who's the creepy, vulnerable villain from Star Wars. The children are encouraged to hand stockings, like the U.S., to hang them up and kind of similar to like what we do. But a lot of the traditions for celebration among the Christian communities in China were actually imported by missionaries. That deliver that message, the message of Advent. So you get kind of a little bit of a different take there. In Belgium, the children in Belgium they're always excited by this like approaching Christmas season. It's a huge thing. And they celebrate the primary gift kind of early, December 6th, because of St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas's Day. We actually did a great show on St. Nicholas. You should check it out. St. Nicholas was like stud. Awesome guy. St. Nicholas riding a horse and carrying great bags of gifts somehow makes the entire journey in one evening. And then after all the gift giving and celebration, the theme of Christmas switches kind of to the holy celebration of the Christ child. So early December 6th is really the big gift giving, and then it's just kind of all about Jesus. Maybe there's a great lesson for us there. The Czechs, Czech Republic, the Czechs celebrate Christmas by feasting. I need to go to Prague. And a lot of gift giving, of course. They also traditionally set a place at the table for Christ the child. Basically, in as much as possible, like the extended family celebrates Christmas together always, but there's always a seat at the table for Christ. That's kind of a cool tradition. I'm going to have to kind of think about adding that one to our family. In Denmark, the Danes celebrate the tradition of St. Nicholas with Santa, but they call Santa Julmanden. He arrives kind of like in the U.S. in a sleigh pulled by reindeer, gifts for kids of all ages. But an additional tradition among the Danish children, it concerns kind of Santa's helpers, the elves. They're actually encouraged to believe that they may live in the attic of their homes. Creepy. and actually leave milk and rice pudding for the helpers to make sure that they send the word to Santa. I don't know about that, Denmark. That's kind of creepy. England, oh, England. England actually exported like a ton of customs to the United States, and that we actually take for granted in our Christmas celebration. So Prince Albert imported from Germany the tradition of bringing in a fir tree. Actually comes from St. Boniface. We've talked about that before. And decorating it with ornaments and fruits during Queen Victoria's reign. And then it quickly spread throughout England as if the royals are doing it. It must be good. So let's all do it. Other features that were kind of imported by the English tradition include like the making of Christmas lists, the giving of boxed gifts, like wrapping the gifts. That actually comes from an older English tradition. After Christmas, you give boxed gifts to visitors as they would kind of come during that time. So that's where that tradition actually came from. The hanging of the stockings by the fireplace and really kind of the general appearance of Santa with bright red robes was actually a British kind of interpretation of the Norwegian version of St. Nicholas. That's kind of cool to know. And one tradition that even a lot of people in England now actually ignore is waiting until late in the day on Christmas to actually open gifts. That tradition would not fly in my house. Not very many countries have more caroling groups than the English. That is a huge English tradition. The week of Christmas, and then particularly the weekend before the actual Christmas day, like pulls everybody with the slightest ability to carry a tune into public squares and on walking around, singing to troops, singing the traditional Christmas melodies. That's very British as well, or that's its origins anyway. France, we told you we talk about France. The French celebrate Christmas throughout the month of December, the whole month, with like lots of families actually beginning kind of the gift giving on December 6th, goes back to St. Nicholas Day, and having like more gifts on December 25th. I got to go to France. That sounds awesome. And then often they open their gifts on New Year's Day also, particularly for adults. So like a lot of households in France have kind of this is kind of cool, like a Christmas Eve watch time, and then they actually celebrate Christmas Day right after the stroke of midnight with a meal and celebratory cakes. That is awesome. When the kids go to bed, they place their shoes rather than their socks by the fireplace. That's a St. Nicholas kind of tradition to get special presents. They rise up early to celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day. That is an American tradition. You should see my house. Oh my gosh, we have to beat our children back to bed. Among people in Paris specifically, the manger scene, the figurines of the Nativity are dressed in modern French fashion clothing. That's kind of funny. The preparation and kind of the selling of this year's manger scene costumes is like a big retail event every year in France, specifically Paris. That's kind of funny. Like modern dress for the Nativity. That cracks me up. Italy, all you wonderful Italians with your awesome pasta. The Italians are well known for celebrating Christmas throughout the month of December also, but don't actually have the significant exchanging of gifts until like the actual traditional day on the arrival of the wise men, January 6th, or the Epiphany, for the first Christmas family. That's more the heart, and that's really the heart of the old Roman Catholic tradition, is that Epiphany was really what was to be celebrated. Italy claims the first nativity scene was actually demonstrated in Italy, Assisi by St. Francis, as a lesson for children. And then today it's nearly in every town and village, like we talked about before. They have regular awards as a result of like contest between the best nativity scene. So that's very much St. Francis of Assisi gift to the church that really spread throughout all of Europe. So because of this kind of type of focus of nativities, it's said that there's actually a lot more animals in public squares in Italy during Advent than in the rest of the world, because it's just a huge part of these live nativities. That would be a sight to see. I want to go to Italy for Christmas now. That'd be kind of fun. India, only a small percentage of the Indian households actually celebrate Christmas, the Christian faith, and celebrate Christmas, of course. And yet decorating actually kind of permeates even like non-Christian households all over the countryside in all kinds of villages, which is pretty neat. They're typically decorated with like greenery, mango leaves, strings of lights, and always the Star of Bethlehem. The star is a beautiful image of Christmas in India. It's hung inside the home. Little kind of personalized gifts are the norm. They're exchanged even in non-Christian homes. So it's not really as big of a deal, but it definitely has impacted India, certainly as a Christian celebration where there are pockets of those populations. Mexico and other Central American countries, they rock Christmas. So Navidad, for a full 9 days leading up to Christmas or Holy Eve. Oh my gosh, there's costumes. Costumes are like the norm, right? Just in public or at your house. Families enjoy like the kind of the theater of knocking on the door, being turned away as the inn is full, and then moving their whole party to kind of either the backyard or the public square. It was a huge celebration. Lots of music played throughout all kinds of celebrations. Specifically, like regional dishes are served. Kids are given sticks to strike piñatas, of course, paper mache, bombs of candy. Often they're in the shape of like nativity animals. Good God bless St. Francis Assisi again. They're filled with candy, but they're the animals kind of from the nativity. So it just explodes, which is wonderful. On the 9th day, they celebrate that Joseph and Mary were welcomed by God, by the angels and the shepherds in the stable, and they enjoy this huge feast. And then when it's all done, the entire family of all ages moves the celebration kind of to the church to celebrate the birth of Christ. How cool is that? So there's just like beautiful connection between the domestic church and then like where these families worship. That's really unique. That's pretty awesome. The Netherlands, the Dutch, the traditions of celebration in the Netherlands are kind of a combination of other stuff we've talked about, like from other geography. They celebrate the tradition of St. Nicholas, obviously, known as Sinterklaas in the Netherlands, and they kind of determined. He originally visited Sweden by boat, setting out on the 6th, the traditional day reserved in the calendar for him from Spain. So it's kind of a celebration of his journey from Spain to the Netherlands. And once he gets on shore, he immediately mounts a horse, and then he makes his gift deliveries of candies, nuts, small hard bread treats to all the people waiting. The shoes that have been set out by the kids, like we talked about before. So old Sinterklaas is kind of tricky, though. He's kind of a different personality for the Dutch. He's kind of a trickster. He's able to appear, and whenever he's kind of accidentally witnessed in the act of giving shoes, it's said that he immediately appears as your father or your grandfather. That's fantastic. So it's kind of built into the lore of the Dutch to just like, oh, if you see your dad putting gifts in your shoes, it's actually St. Nicholas and he's tricky, and that's just what he does. I think that's brilliant. I got to try that with my kids. Poland, some of my best friends are very Polish. Poland has a lot of rich traditions of reserving space, like on the village and like city squares, for big, almost like carnival like stalls or booths called I'm going to say this wrong, Hoselki. Anyway, the booths they're decorated with like Christmas themes, like you would think, and then they're celebrated from Christmas Day to New Year's Day. So families and businesses make a lot of effort, like to make their booth the booth, think like street market, right? They want their booth to be the favorite one. And they have scenes. There's scenes from the Bible, telling the Christmas story, little gifts, candy, Christmas cards given out from the booths to all the passersby, and then lots of caroling. That's very Polish as well. They move from booth to booth on Christmas Eve. After which, as that kind of concludes, the entire village kind of makes their way to the church to celebrate late evening mass, kind of like that Mexican Hispanic Latino culture, which is pretty cool. Spain, the citizens of Spain the majority have been Catholic over the years. So traditionally, the celebrations are very similar, the great themes of Christmas. But the gift-giving tradition assumes that wise men on horseback actually give the gifts to the children in some type of like reenactment of the first Christmas gift giving. Isn't that amazing? So it's using the wise men from the Epiphany and the image of the horse from Santa Claus as like the gift giving process. Isn't that bizarre? So there's like a lot of care made to provide food for the horses and treats for the people on the horses. They typically celebrate Christmas Eve, specifically, Noche Buena, with their families. And then of course, friends, with a big meal, and that's kind of typical of most Christmas celebrations. Almost every family will have a nativity scene. That's another big part of the European church, and some are really elaborate. So families go from home to home to see each other's nativity scenes. The American version of that is the lights and the decorations that we do, but the nativity scene itself is actually really the source of decor. So that's kind of cool. This is cool. In the Spanish culture as well, similar to other places, there's a culmination towards the community mass, which I love. It's at the center. Sweden. The Swedes have created a number of tons of unique perspectives around Christmas celebration, not the least of which is referring to their version of Santa, whose name is Tomte, Tomte, as type of kind of an actually unattractive and some children would actually kind of say scary, like a gnome, which is kind of funny, who only appears out of a barn or from under a building to deliver gifts. That's kind of creepy. No reindeer in Sweden. Instead, the rather kind of diminutive sleigh is drawn by a magic goat. Thank you, Swedes. And the gifts, only for the very, very good children, are left sometimes well hidden throughout the house. So the packages are typically wrapped in several layers of paper to make the opening of the gift more of an event. Oh my gosh, Sweden, you are rocking Christmas. This sounds kind of like Halloween, creepy, but I'm all in. All right. In Sweden, the eldest daughter has the privilege of serving the entire family a special treat on St. Lucia Day, Santa Lucia, December 13th. So she dresses for the part with traditional white robe-like dress, special jewelry for her headdress, and then wakes the family to this very traditional celebratory breakfast of fresh-baked buns and cookies. And then later in that same day, the traditional dinner of fish is topped off with Christmas pudding. That's cool. That's really unique to Sweden. Russia, the celebration of Christmas in Russia changed actually pretty dramatically after the revolution of 1917. You can imagine when, church is basically made illegal. Christmas is a very religious holiday. So, they throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one. Many are not aware that a lot of the traditions of celebrating Christmas observed pre-1917 that were church-based were totally banished. By the government. It's like a bad kid's cartoon. Long Christmas parades with costumes, the Star of Bethlehem on poles, and the huge meals celebrated together before attending Mass, after visiting the nativity scenes in public squares. All of that was banned. Kind of a different gift giver personality was created, and St. Nicholas was sort of replaced with Grandfather Frost. That's kind of weird. The Russian communities now, they're more relaxed about it. But now you have a mixture of celebrations during Christmas and New Year's season. So you have these kind of older traditions, the more Christocentric traditions, and then you have these modern traditions. So the celebration with decorated tree takes place typically on New Year's, and then special children's parties are kind of sponsored by parents and grandparents and even some churches. So gifts, when they're delivered, they come from Grandfather Frost and his helper, the Snow Maiden. Now you know. All right. Switzerland. We'll finish with this one. Switzerland. The Swiss celebrate Christmas as like a holy extended celebration with the spirit of gift giving directed by like a character called Christkind. Basically means Christ child, who is the spiritualized sort of present day incarnation of Christ, specifically, kind of almost like the infant of Prague. If you're familiar with that, kind of the notion of a child Jesus. The gift giving, which all children, totally look forward to, like in the States, is certainly helped by his assistant, St. Nicholas. So there's very much that St. Nicholas tradition is also there. The spirit of St. Nicholas in the form of kind of a brightly dressed helper. The Swiss have been really careful to actually maintain kind of the central figure of the holiday celebration as Christ specifically. So there's a real defense against a lot of the modern take on the holiday. There's plays, like we've heard before, like music filling the town squares, and then usually quiet. Kind of a quiet and somewhat reserved Swiss people, they really get into the spirit of the holiday with living nativity scenes, which, like we've talked about in other European countries, street side theater, and then kind of just general goodwill flowing from kind of walk-by samplings of Christmas fruits, kind of like those booths, like we talked about before, cakes and cookies and whatnot. Man, it's just not the same everywhere in the world. That's so cool. Christ was born into the world. It's about the coming and the second coming, and all over. I mean, everywhere we celebrate it kind of differently, and that is awesome. At the middle of it, don't forget, this is God saying, "All right, I'm coming here, one-on-one, full-on incarnation." Certainly worth waiting for. That's the celebration of Advent. But man, when it comes time to celebrate Christ's birth, roll out the carpet, man. Absorb some of these traditions. Maybe they'll add to your family traditions. Hopefully you don't make Santa into a creepy gnome, though. That one, I don't know if I could convince my kids that he lives in the attic and that he's tricky. I don't know. I don't think I could pull that one off. But we'll do our best. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll do a couple more shows talking about the holiday, but what a fun time to learn what the rest of the world does. Don't forget to visit RenovoPodcast.com for past episodes. Please subscribe to, review, and rate our podcast. We always appreciate your input. Your topic suggestions, questions, and or comments are always welcome at Doug@RenovoPodcast.com. Learn more about me at DougTuke.com or on Twitter and Instagram at DTOOKE. And the number one, always remember to engage the tradition and live the conversion. Until next time, Merry Christmas, everybody.